Have you noticed that the more the world tells you to just push through it, the more exhausted people seem to become? And have you ever realized that what you called strength might actually be a kind of quiet breaking that nobody sees? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about resilience in the deepest sense. Not the loud version that looks impressive on the outside, but the kind that stays steady when life does not cooperate. The kind that does not harden you into a stone. The kind that keeps your heart open without making you naive. The kind that helps you face loss, change, uncertainty, and pressure without losing yourself. In 2026, the push-through mentality is everywhere. It shows up in work culture. It shows up in hustle talk. It shows up in the way people speak to themselves when they are struggling. You should be tougher. Stop feeling. Keep going. Do not slow down. Do not complain. Do not rest. If you cannot keep up, something is wrong with you. That voice is so common that many people mistake it for motivation. But for a lot of people, it is not motivation. It is a threat. And when your inner engine runs on threats, it might move you forward for a while, but it burns your nervous system. It isolates you. It turns you into someone who survives, but does not truly live. So we need a different model. Buddhism offers one, not as a trend, not as a slogan, but as a training for the mind and heart. It reframes adversity from something you must resist at all costs into something you can understand, meet, and integrate. It replaces brittle toughness with flexible resilience. It teaches you how to stop adding extra suffering on top of the pain that life naturally brings. And it gives you practices that build inner strength without turning you into a clenched fist. Let us first separate toughness from resilience, because many people confuse them. Toughness is often about display. It is about looking unaffected. It is about forcing yourself to keep functioning no matter what. It is about maintaining an image. Toughness can be useful in emergencies. If you need to move quickly, protect someone, make a decision under pressure, a burst of toughness can help. But toughness becomes a mirage when it is used as a permanent lifestyle. Because toughness tends to be brittle. It relies on suppression. It relies on denial. It relies on pushing feelings underground. And anything pushed underground does not disappear. It wakes. It leaks. It erupts. It turns into anxiety, irritability, numbness, burnout, or the sudden collapse that comes when the body finally says no. Resilience is different. Resilience is fluid. It is the ability to bend without breaking. It is the ability to feel pain without becoming only pain. It is the ability to adapt without losing your values. It is the ability to recover and integrate, not just endure. Resilience is not loud. Often nobody applauds it. It looks like a person who is honest about what hurts, kind to themselves, connected to others, and willing to learn. It looks like someone who can rest without guilt and act without panic. It looks like someone who can be changed by life without being destroyed by it. Buddhism points to resilience as a natural result of understanding how suffering works, not as a moral badge, but as a practical outcome of training the mind. Now let us step into the Buddhist lens. One of the most misunderstood Buddhist ideas is the phrase suffering arises from attachment. People hear that and think it means you should not love anyone. You should not care. You should detach from life. But that is not what it means. It means that suffering is intensified when we cling to how we think life should be and resist how life actually is. Pain is inevitable. Bodies get sick. People leave. Jobs change. Plans fail. The world shifts. That is pain. But suffering is what happens when the mind says this should not be happening. This must not be happening. I cannot handle this. This means I am doomed. This means I am worthless. That mental resistance adds a second arrow on top of the first arrow of pain. If you have ever felt a difficult emotion and then criticized yourself for feeling it, you know exactly what the second arrow is. First arrow, sadness. Second arrow, I should not be sad. I am weak. I am falling behind. First arrow, Fear. Second arrow. I must stop this fear immediately. Something is wrong with me. I cannot be like this. First arrow. Grief. Second arrow. I should be over this by now. I am a burden. I should be stronger. The second arrow is optional, but most people shoot it automatically. Buddhist resilience begins with learning to stop shooting the second arrow. That is where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is not a vibe. It is not a personality. It is not pretending to be calm. Mindfulness is the skill of observing what is happening without immediately turning it into judgment and reaction. It is seeing the feeling as a feeling, the thought as a thought, the sensation as a sensation. That simple shift creates space. And in that space, you can respond wisely instead of reacting blindly. In modern life, reaction is the default. Someone triggers you, you fire back. A setback happens, you spiral. Uncertainty arises, you catastrophize. You feel lonely, you numb. You'll feel stress, you scroll. You feel fear, you avoid. Reaction is fast, but it is expensive. It costs you clarity. It costs you relationships. It costs you health. And it often multiplies suffering. Mindfulness is the pause that changes the bill. The Buddha also emphasized impermanence. Everything changes. This is not meant to be depressing. It is meant to be liberating. When you understand impermanence, you stop demanding that life stay frozen in the form you like. You still prefer comfort over pain, of course, but you stop treating discomfort like an emergency that must be eliminated instantly. You remember that emotions rise and fall, circumstances shift, seasons pass. Even intense experiences change moment by moment. That understanding reduces fear and increases adaptability. A resilient mind remembers change. A brittle mind demands permanence. Now let us talk about compassion, because compassion is the core of true strength in Buddhism. This might sound surprising in a culture that celebrates harshness as strength. Many people think compassion will make them soft and vulnerable and easy to exploit. But Buddhist compassion is not weakness. It is courage. It is the willingness to stay open in a world that can hurt you, while also staying wise enough to set boundaries and act skillfully. Self-compassion is especially important. When people are in adversity, many of them become cruel to themselves. They talk to themselves in a way they would never talk to a friend. They use shame as a whip. They think shame will make them stronger. But shame drains the nervous system. It narrows attention. It increases avoidance. It makes you more likely to collapse or lash out. Kindness builds inner reserves. It helps the mind recover. It makes you more capable of effort. It makes you more willing to try again after failure. Self-compassion does not mean you avoid responsibility. It means you take responsibility without hatred. Compassion for others is also part of resilience. When you recognize shared humanity in struggle, you feel less alone. And isolation is one of the biggest amplifiers of suffering. Many people are not only suffering from their problem, they are suffering from believing they must carry it alone. Compassion reconnects you. It reminds you that struggle is not proof of defect. It is part of being human. That recognition reduces shame, and reduced shame increases resilience. Now we need to talk about difficult emotions, because toughness often means suppressing them. Resilience means integrating them. Fear, grief, anger, disappointment, loneliness, envy, regret. These are not enemies. They are signals. They are energies moving through the nervous system. When you suppress them, they do not vanish. They become chronic tension. They show up as irritability. They show up as numbness. They show up as unhealthy coping. When you acknowledge them with mindfulness and compassion, they soften. They move. They teach you what matters. They become part of your wisdom. A resilient person can say, "I am afraid," and still act wisely. A tough person often says, "I am not afraid," while their body screams otherwise. Now let us bring this to life with a story. Because resilience is best understood in lived moments. Imagine someone named David. David is not a single person. He is a blend of people many of us have seen. The person who prides themselves on being unbreakable. David grew up with the message that feelings are weakness. In his family, if you struggled, you were told to toughen up. If you cried, you were mocked. If you asked for help, you were told to stop being dramatic. David learned to survive by shutting down vulnerability. He became a performer of strength. He worked hard. He never said no. He carried everyone. People admired him. They called him reliable. They said he was strong. But inside, David was constantly tense. His jaw was always tight. His sleep was shallow. His mind was always racing. He did not feel peace. He felt pressure. He told himself that was normal. He thought that was what adulthood is. Then, one year, a series of events hit him. A career setback, a relationship strain, a health scare. Nothing that would make headlines, but enough to shake the foundation. David did what he always did. He pushed through. He worked more. He talked less. He avoided rest. He pretended he was fine. And then one morning, his body refused. He woke up and could not move, not physically paralyzed, but mentally and emotionally frozen. His chest was tight. His thoughts were loud. He felt panic. He felt shame about the panic. He felt failure about the shame. The second arrow was firing nonstop. David finally admitted something to himself. Toughness is not working. He started looking for a different way. A friend suggested a simple mindfulness. Alas, David resisted. He imagined incense and vague talk, but he was desperate. So he went. The teacher did not ask David to believe anything. The teacher asked him to observe. Observe the breath. Observe the body. Observe thoughts like weather. David tried and immediately felt frustrated. His mind would not quiet down. The teacher said something that changed his approach. You are not here to force quiet. You are here to stop fighting what is already happening. Fighting is what exhausts you. David realized that his whole life was fighting. Fighting feeling. Fighting uncertainty. Fighting fatigue. Fighting grief. Fighting his own humanity. He began practicing a small routine. 5 minutes of sitting in the morning. Not to become perfect, just to notice. When fear came, he named it fear. When shame came, he named it shame. When thoughts yelled, he named them thinking. Then he returned to breath, again and again. That return was the training. At first it felt pointless. Then he noticed something. The fear still came, but it did not always swallow him. The shame still came, but it did not always control him. He began to experience the space between emotion and identity. Fear is here, but I am not only fear. Shame is here, but I am not only shame. This is resilience being born. It is not dramatic. It is subtle. But it is real. David also learned self-compassion. This was hard for him. He thought kindness was indulgence, but he tested it. When he made a mistake, instead of calling himself names, he said, "That hurt, and I am learning." When he felt tired, instead of shaming himself, he rested for 20 minutes. When he felt overwhelmed, he asked for help. Each time he did this, the world did not end. In fact, his capacity improved. His mind became clearer. His relationships softened. His body felt less like a battlefield. He started realizing that resilience is not the ability to ignore pain. It is the ability to meet pain without adding violence to it. Now let us connect this to Buddhist frameworks, like the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, but in a way that feels practical. The Four Noble Truths are often presented as philosophy, but they are really a map for resilience. First, suffering exists. This is not pessimism. It is honesty. A resilient person begins with honesty. Denial is brittle. Second, suffering has causes. This is empowering. It means suffering is not random chaos. It has patterns. You can study them. You can interrupt them. Third, suffering can end. Not all pain ends, but the unnecessary suffering created by clinging on ignorance can be reduced dramatically. This creates hope that is grounded, not naive. Fourth, there is a path. Resilience is not a wish. It is a practice. The Eightfold Path then becomes a set of practices that build resilient living. Wise understanding means seeing impermanence, seeing interdependence, and seeing how the mind creates extra suffering. Wise intention means aiming the heart toward compassion, non-harm, and clarity. Wise speech means speaking in ways that reduce conflict and increase trust, which makes your life more stable and supportive. Wise action means living ethically, because unethical choices create chaos, guilt, and fear, which weaken resilience. Wise livelihood means aligning work with values as much as possible, reducing inner conflict. Wise effort means steady practice without harshness, like training a muscle with consistency rather than self-punishment. Wise mindfulness means observing reality as it is, so you can respond wisely. Wise concentration means training attention, which stabilizes the mind under stress. You do not need to memorize these terms to benefit from them. You can treat them as a simple question. Is my way of living creating more suffering or less? Is it creating stability or chaos? Is it creating connection or isolation? Is it creating clarity or confusion? Resilience grows from the choices that reduce chaos and increase clarity. Now let us explore specific practices that cultivate unshakable inner strength. Starting with emotional regulation through meditation. Meditation is often misunderstood as trying to blank the mind. That is not resilience. That is avoidance. Meditation in the Buddhist sense is training. You train attention to stay present. You train awareness to observe sensations and thoughts without being controlled. You train kindness toward the mind instead of aggression. Over time, this changes how you respond to stress. You become less reactive. You recover faster. You can sit with discomfort without collapsing. This is emotional regulation, not as suppression, but as skill. A simple meditation that builds resilience is the practice of naming. Use it, and when something arises, you name it gently. Thinking, worry, planning, fear, tightness, sadness. Then you return to breath. Naming reduces fusion. It helps you see the mind as events, not commands. Another practice is breathing with the body. When stress rises, the mind goes to the future. What if? What if? What if? The body anchors you in the present. Feel the feet. Feel the hands. Feel the belly rise and fall. This grounds the nervous system. Grounding increases resilience because it reduces panic decision. Now let us talk about acts of kindness and service. This might sound unrelated to resilience, but it is central in Buddhism. When you are suffering, the mind tends to shrink into self-preoccupation. That is natural. But chronic self-preoccupation amplifies suffering because you keep looping on your pain. Acts of kindness widen the mind. They reconnect you to meaning. They remind you that you can still contribute. They create belonging. And belonging is a powerful buffer against adversity. Service does not have to be dramatic. It can be a supportive message to someone. It can be helping a neighbor. It can be volunteering once a month. It can be listening without trying to fix. These actions build purpose. Purpose builds resilience. Now let us make this even more concrete by looking at everyday challenges. Career setbacks. In 2026, many people face uncertainty in work. Job markets shift. Companies restructure. Skills become outdated faster. People feel replaceable. A toughness mindset says, ignore your fear and grind harder. That may push you short term, but it can also create chronic anxiety and resentment. A Buddhist resilience mindset says, yes, fear is here, and fear is understandable. Now what is skillful? Skillful might mean learning new skills steadily, networking with humility, updating your resume, setting boundaries to protect health, accepting that outcomes are uncertain and focusing on actions you can take now. It also means not tying your entire identity to a job title. Impermanence applies to roles too. You are more than a role. When you know that, setbacks hurt, but they do not erase you. Relationship difficulties. Toughness says, do not need anyone. Pretend you are fine. Become cold. Or it says, win the argument at any cost. Both paths weaken resilience because they damage connection. Buddhist resilience says, relationships are a practice of compassion and boundaries. It encourages you to listen, to speak honestly, to acknowledge emotions, to repair when possible, and to leave harm when necessary without hatred. It teaches you to see that the other person is also a being shaped by causes and conditions, not a fixed villain. This does not excuse harm, but it reduces rage and increases clarity. Grief and loss. Toughness says, get over it. Stay busy. Do not feel. This creates delayed grief, which can become depression or numbness. Buddhist resilience says, grief is love with nowhere to go, and grief needs space. You feel it. You cry if you cry. You breathe. You remember impermanence. You allow waves. You do not turn grief into a permanent identity. You also remember that compassion is not only for others, it is for you. Over time, grief integrates. It becomes part of your wisdom. The scar remains, but it is not an open wound forever. Health challenges. Toughness says, ignore the body until it breaks. Then, blame yourself. Buddhist resilience says, the body is part of your path. Care for it is not vanity. It is responsibility. It means rest, nutrition, movement, medical support, and also a gentle mind that does not turn illness into shame. Even when the body cannot be fixed easily, the relationship to the body can change. You can live with dignity inside limitation. That is resilience. Now let us address the ongoing journey aspect. Because resilience is not a destination. It is a process. Many people think resilience means you reach a point where nothing shakes you. That is not realistic. Life will shake you. The question is what happens after you are shaken. Do you break and stay broken? Do you harden and isolate? Or do you feel, learn, integrate, and return? Buddhism describes this as practice. You fall, you return. You get distracted, you return. You get triggered, you return. Returning is the path. Returning is resilience. Now I want to share another story. This time focused on compassion as strength. Imagine someone named Mia. Mia is caring and sensitive. She is the person friends call when they are struggling. She gives a lot. She also carries a hidden pattern. She believes her worth comes from being useful. So she says yes even when exhausted. She helps even when resentful. She listens even when empty. On the outside she looks tough, dependable, always there. On the inside she feels drained and invisible. One year, Mia faces a crisis. A family member becomes ill. Mia becomes the primary caregiver. She pushes through. She sleeps less. She stops doing anything for herself. She tells herself she should be grateful she can help. But secretly she feels overwhelmed. She feels guilt for feeling overwhelmed. She feels shame for wanting a break. The second arrow again. Mia eventually reaches a breaking point. Not a dramatic breakdown, but a quiet collapse. She finds herself snapping at small things. She feels numb. She stops feeling joy. She begins to dread mornings. She thinks, I am not resilient. I am failing. Then someone introduces her to a Buddhist idea that changes everything. Compassion must include you. If you exclude yourself from compassion, your compassion for others will become thin, resentful, and unstable. Self-compassion is not selfish. It is the foundation for sustainable care. Mia begins practicing a small self-compassion routine. Each day, she takes 3 minutes and places a hand on her chest. She breathes. She says silently, "This is hard. Many people struggle. May I be kind to myself." The words feel awkward at first. Then she notices her body softening. Tears come. She realizes she has been treating herself like a machine. Mia also begins practicing boundaries. She asks other family members to share tasks. She hires help when possible. She schedules rest like medicine. She feels guilty. Then she practices mindfulness with the guilt. She sees the guilt as a thought pattern, not a moral truth. She returns to the idea that caring for herself helps her care better. Over time, Mia becomes more resilient, not because her life becomes easy, but because her inner approach becomes wise. She becomes less brittle. She stops breaking in secret. She begins integrating. That is the difference between toughness and resilience. Toughness demands you keep functioning. Resilience teaches you to keep living. Now let us talk about resistance and understanding again, because this is one of the most powerful Buddhist contributions to resilience. When pain arrives, resistance is automatic. The mind says no. I do not want this. This should not be happening. I cannot tolerate it. Resistance is understandable, but it often amplifies suffering. It tightens the body. It accelerates thought. It creates panic. It creates anger. Buddhism does not ask you to like pain. It asks you to understand it. Understanding means you get curious. What exactly is happening in the body? What exactly is happening in the mind? What story am I adding? What is impermanent here? What can I control? What can I accept? What would be the kindest next step? Understanding turns pain into information rather than identity. That shift is resilience. Now we need to address something important about modern toughness culture. Many people are not actually tough. They are dissociated. They are disconnected from their own feelings. They are functioning while numb. They are smiling while collapsing inside. This is not strength. It is survival mode. Survival mode is useful in emergencies, but terrible as a lifestyle. It destroys creativity. It destroys intimacy. It destroys health. Buddhist resilience invites you out of survival mode into presence. Presence is not always comfortable, but it is alive, and an alive mind can adapt. A numb mind cannot. Now let us shift into practical steps you can take today, but we will keep it flowing, not as a list, as a simple path you can walk. First, choose one small daily mindfulness practice. It could be 3 minutes. Sit and feel the breath. When thoughts come, label them thinking and return. This trains the pause. The pause is resilience. Second, practice naming the second arrow. When you feel pain, notice what extra story you add. Do you add shame? Do you add catastrophizing? Do you add self-hatred? Just noticing is powerful. You cannot change what you do not see. Third, practice self-compassion as a skill, not a mood. When you struggle, speak to yourself as you would speak to someone you love. You can still be honest. You can still hold standards, but do it without cruelty. Fourth, connect with others. Resilience is not only internal. Humans are social nervous systems. We regulate through safe connection. If you isolate, stress grows. If you share honestly with someone safe, stress decreases. This is not weakness. This is biology and wisdom aligned. Fifth, do one small act of kindness, especially when you feel trapped in your own mind. Kindness widens perspective and restores meaning. Sixth, remember impermanence. When you are overwhelmed, say quietly, "This will change." Not as denial, but as truth. Then ask, what is the next step? Seventh, reflect on intention. In Buddhism, intention shapes karma. Intention also shapes resilience. If your intention is to prove yourself, you will strain. If your intention is to learn and care, You will steady. Now I want to close by bringing everything back to the opening hook. The push-through mentality is failing us because it tries to solve human vulnerability with hardness. But vulnerability is not a defect. It is part of being alive. The real answer is not hardness. The real answer is wisdom and compassion, trained through practice. Resilience is not pretending you are fine. It is knowing how to be with not fine without collapsing. It is allowing emotions without being owned. It is adapting to change without losing your values. It is resting without shame. It is asking for help without humiliation. It is serving others without losing yourself. It is learning from hardship and becoming more human, not less. The Buddhist path offers this because it teaches you to stop fighting reality and start working with it. It teaches you to see how suffering arises, how the mind adds extra suffering, and how compassion and mindfulness can interrupt the cycle. It teaches you that everything changes, and that remembering change makes you brave. It teaches you that strength is not the absence of emotion, but the presence of wisdom. Now I want to hear from you. What is one area of your life where toughness has been costing you more than you realized? And what would true resilience look like for you this week in a specific real situation? Share your story in the comments. If you want more long-form teachings like this that help you build real inner strength, subscribe to the channel and like the video so more people can find it. And if you want to support the channel more directly, consider joining the membership. It helps keep these deeper conversations going. Until next time, do not just push through. Notice, choose kindness, and remember that real resilience is not a mask you wear. It is a way you meet life.
At the end of the day, we all need something that brings us back to ourselves. Something that reminds us to slow down, breathe, and stay centered. Simple bracelet can do exactly that. Every bead you touch brings your mind back to calm, back to clarity, back to the present moment. If one of the bracelets you just saw resonates with you, you can find the purchase link in the video description and explore more beautiful styles in our channel store. Let the one meant for you find its way to your wrist.